Hey everyone, it's Ryan from Rocky Mountain Cigar Show here, back for another live Thursday night show. Thank you so much for those of you that are going to jump on and watch the show. We got a really special show tonight, and it's part of a new hobby for me. I've been getting into pipes quite a bit lately, and just have been absolutely loving it. And I'll be very honest. I've been getting into pipes because of the Stillwell Star cigar. But before we get into a little bit more about what we're going to do tonight, definitely want to give huge shout outs to everybody involved with making this show what it is. Outside of you, the fantastic people that watch, we have BAMF Cigars, ROCF Cigars, Christoph, New Air Humidors. Oh, right there. And we've got Sagrado Cigars and McAuliffe, as well as tonight, I'm going to be drinking the Axe and Oak Port Cask strength whiskey that they make, bourbon whiskey that they make. So, very much looking forward to pairing that with all this fun stuff. Now, I had decided to do a little bit of a blending show today, and hang on one second. And decided to do a little bit of a blending show tonight, and we're going to show you with the help of the head blender for Cornell Diehl, the company that actually blended the core pipe side of one of my favorite cigars of last year, the Stillwell Star. I've spoken with Jeremy Reeves several times, and we're going to be bringing him on to kind of do a basic to maybe moderate level explanation and showing how to do some of your own home blending. I have a ton of Cornell Diehl sitting right next to me. Everything from Perique, Latakia, Cigar Leaf, pretty much everything they have to some extent. And I am just so excited. Jeremy Reeves, how are you doing, sir?
How are you, Ryan?
I'm
Really
doing
good.
well. I'm doing well. It's nice to actually see you, not in person, but we've talked, I feel, so much in the last couple of weeks because I'm just one of those people that I get my mind on something and I just wanted to know more and understand more. And I'll tell you what, guys, if you ever have a question and you call Cornell Diehl, you will get this man. I can absolutely attest. He will answer any of your questions. And it has been such a help to me in my own growth over the last couple weeks since we've been talking. But for those of you that don't know Jeremy, I will give him the floor for a quick little intro. Jeremy, tell us how long you've been there, what you do at Cornell Diehl, and how you became a head blender.
Okay. Um, yeah, sort of a weird series of events that led to my coming to Cornell Diehl. Um, so I grew up in a little town in New Mexico. I moved to Chicago when I was 19 and wanted to. Let's see, we're getting messages here. There's no volume.
No, I think that was just on the ad. Can you guys hear us? Because I could hear him. Can you? Yeah, I think they could hear
Yeah.
us.
All right. Um, So yeah, I moved to Chicago when I was 19 and met a really good friend of mine who after hanging out for a few years and just knowing each other and we were roommates for a long time too, but he kind of got into cigars at one point and turned me on to cigars, and then I just kind of went buck wild with it in a way that he just never really did. So he kind of turned me onto it, but I got way more into it. And so I ended up getting a job at a cigar shop in Chicago called Blue Havana, and worked, was just working behind the counter, ended up becoming manager, and ending up just, exploring every aspect of tobacco and tobacconiana that I could get my hands on. And of course, pipes and pipe tobacco was part of that. And so began kind of dabbling. This is all like 2003. So I worked at Blue Havana for a few years, and then ended up getting a job at Yvonne Reese, also there in Chicago and in the South Loop. And that is one of the oldest tobacco shops in the country, and they're much more heavily focused on pipe than a lot of tobacco shops that are around. And so while I had dabbled in pipe before really going to work at Yvonne Reese in like 2006, was a transitionary period for me where like I went from being mainly a cigar smoker who dabbled in pipes to being a pipe smoker who occasionally smoked a cigar. That's where I first encountered Cornell Diehl pipe tobacco, was while I was working at Yvonne Reese back in 2006. And so I did a few different things. I've worked in restaurants a bunch. I've worked in several different tobacco shops, and found myself moving around a lot. I was in Portland at one point working at a wood-fired pizza place, and I had been just really burning the candle at both ends for quite a long time. We made everything from scratch there and stuff, and I decided that I was maybe interested in getting back into going to work in tobacco, and decided to apply to smoking pipes. And didn't really expect to hear anything back because I was in Portland, Oregon at the time, and they're all the way down at the other end of the country. And they called me the very next day, and flew me out, and I did 3 days of really intense interviews, and at the end of that time they offered me a position in customer service at Smoking Pipes, and so I accepted and moved across the country. And when I got there, found out that Cornell and Diehl had just merged into the parent company of SmokingPipes.com, Ludisi Enterprises. And so they were like, hey, before you were just some guy who was interviewing for a position, but now that you're actually here and part of the company, you should know that your favorite pipe tobacco manufacturer is also just about to become part of the company that you now work for.
That's awesome.
So a year later, they told me, hey, Cornell and Diehl is moving from Morganton, North Carolina, where they've been for the past many years, down to be in the same building as the rest of us. And when that time comes, we know that the head blender at C&D does not want to relocate. He had been with C&D for over 20 years. He was 79 years old. And Ted Connolly was his name, and he wanted to retire. And they asked me if I was interested in going and learning from Ted and stepping into his position. And I accepted. So yeah, kind of a dream series of situations. And basically the
stars aligned.
Yeah, my experience in restaurants, and putting together flavors and putting together menus, and building things from scratch, and my experience in premium tobacco retail, and just knowing about different styles of tobacco, different types of tobacco, and the processes that make these things happen. And this was an opportunity to take some hands-on knowledge and some more theoretical knowledge and put those things together and go make my bones in a whole different kind of kitchen.
Absolutely. So before we move forward here, we have a comment from Matt, new pipe smoker as well. For 1 year, I was inspired by the Stillwell Stars, same as me. Now, my granddad was a pipe smoker, but I just smoked cigarettes stupidly back then and didn't get into pipes with him. And I absolutely regret that. But he has several C&D blends, loves them so far. Great to finally see an interview with the man himself. Now, Jeremy is not a hard guy to find online as far as shows he's been on. But I will say, depending on the show you watch, Jeremy looks completely different depending on the year. You go 7 years back, short beard, wore no hat, and then eventually shaved that off and grew that back. It's honestly, go through the 7 years of videos on Cornell Diehl's YouTube page. It's a lot of fun. It's very informative as well. So Jeremy, kind of before we get into what we're doing tonight, because I have 8 different tobaccos that we're going to do a little segment on home blending. I want to dig into, how did you meet Saka? How the heck did you get to collab? I don't think Saka's collaborated with anybody. So what made you the man that he chose, and why Cornell Diehl?
Honestly, he approached us. And I had not met Steve before. Steve had met Shane Ireland, who is the director of Smoking Pipes, and he had apparently impressed Steve, and Steve kind of like let Shane in on the fact that he had been a customer at Smoking Pipes, just buying stuff on the website, and that he was buying a bunch of Cornell Diehl pipe tobacco, and that he had a project that he was interested in pursuing. And then he literally like hit us up and said, "Hey, I want to come down and visit Cornell Diehl. I've got some ideas."
Wow.
So this was literally Steve looking around and looking at the options for pipe tobacco that he could find, and feeling like we were a company that he was interested to work with. And so
that says a lot. That really says, because Steve is one of those guys that as soon as you talk to him and you sit down with him for any period of time, is incredibly picky. Mm-hmm. And he literally is a man that knows exactly what he wants and how he wants it. Mm-hmm. So for Cornell Diehl, which you guys have been around over 20 years at this point, but for
30 years,
I'm sorry, but for Cornell Diehl, that's still a young lifespan to some of the bigger tobacco companies. So he decided to go with you guys. Why do you think he decided to go? What do you think drew him to Cornell Diehl?
Well, I think that pipe tobacco houses tend to have identifiable sort of characteristics and flavor profiles. And I would say that Steve appreciated what we were doing with Leaf. I think that he saw that we use good quality tobacco, and that we focus on real tobacco flavors. He explored a lot of different things, and at the end of it all, felt like what we were producing was something that he was interested in incorporating into his own product.
And the one thing I've noticed with you guys, you and I have talked about this before we ever even came on, but you guys don't pull punches with tobacco, and I think Steve's kind of in that same way. Like we have talked about how you guys are one of the few blends or brands that actually will obviously not give ratio, but give that information. Whereas a lot of other companies will be a little cryptic about what they do to the tobacco to make it better. Mm-hmm. And that's something that I really truly have appreciated, because I've been able to look into your blends, and I know when you and I talked about topping versus casing, and I want you to explain that, because even the guy at the pipe shop had that terminology almost working in tandem with each other. And that's absolutely not the case. So, but it's just been fun because I know what I'm getting from your stuff. I look at the back of your tin and bam, it tells me exactly what's in it. Even your aromatics tell you what's in it. You know, there's no hiding of it. So what is the difference for those that don't know? Well, hold on. Let's back up. Let's continue on the Stillwell Star for just a few more minutes. So he came in and you started talking about Stillwell Star. How long was this process?
Well, so he came in and I had put together, I did not understand that Steve had been smoking a pipe for a long time and just not publicly. And so, you know, he wanted to come down and check out tobacco and kind of explore this idea. This, you know, he hadn't really fleshed out exactly what he wanted to do to us. He just told us that he had an idea that he wanted to explore with us. He wanted to come and visit. So I put together a leaf presentation. Basically, I went through our warehouse and like pulled out a bunch of different samples of some things and thought, you know, okay, we'll smoke through and kind of evaluate some stuff and kind of get Steve familiar with the kinds of tobaccos that we're using and the kinds of tobaccos that we have available to use for whatever this project is. And so I had everything all laid out. And when he showed up with a big Pelican case, you know, like a rolling one, and walked into the back room and looked at everything that I had set up. And literally he told me, I appreciate the time and effort that you've put into all this, but none of this is necessary. And he dropped open this big Pelican case, and I don't know how many tins of tobacco were in there, and they were all written on. You know how we have the like white lids on, you know, all the overcaps were written on with notes and his own like grading system, you know. So he had taken Sharpie and written like a couple of notes and like an A plus, B plus, C plus kind of like grading system on everything. And so he went through and just like handed me stuff, and he was like, all right, I'm interested in this. Oh yeah, and this one sucks. I don't know why it sucks, but I don't like it. Tell me why it sucks. You know, and it's just like, you know,
that's intimidating.
Is very Steve, and
yeah,
so this is my first time meeting this guy, and like I felt like I really knew a lot about him and about like, you know, the like you said, like the pickiness and knowing exactly what he wants.
There's no nonsense with Steve.
Yeah, no nonsense at all. You always know exactly what he thinks. And so yeah, that's kind of how Stillwell Star started. Was like, so he told us that basically, and these are his words, that he had been a closet pipe smoker because he's a cigar guy. He owns a cigar brand, and there's no good seeing him smoke a pipe out in public. So he does that at home, but he would take pipe tobaccos that he was enjoying down to Nika with him and have a few blends rolled with a little bit of his pipe tobacco added to them. And this was something that he'd been doing for a long time.
Oh yeah.
And so that was where he wanted to go with this, was like, if this is something that appeals to me, would this be something that would appeal to a lot of other people? And so the Stillwell Star idea literally came from something that Steve had been doing just for himself for like 30 years.
Yeah, that and that's just, I just love how stories like that kind of come out, because he was doing it for so long, took a shot and a gamble. So you guys are talking, and it paid off, to be very honest with you. I think it's the best variation or the best marriage of pipe tobacco and cigar that I've ever smoked. Hands down. I mean, it's flawless in my opinion. And it honestly, I'm a little biased because it did turn me into a now where I have 22 of your blends between what's on my desk and what's over here. And it turned me onto Cornell and Diehl because I wanted to find out more about the company that blended one of my favorite cigars. So as you're doing the Stillwell Star, how much input did you have, or were you kind of the chef in the sense of he was making orders? Does that make sense?
So basically what Steve asked from us was what he thought would work in a blend he had in mind. He was like, I know I want a Virginia Perique. Put something together that you think smokes well and performs well as a pipe tobacco, and let's see how it does. And so we basically went back and forth. I don't know how many samples we went through on some of these things. Some of these
Probably
things
a lot.
worked. Some of these things went really quickly. Some of these things took a lot of time. The aromatic in particular was something that really took a lot of time to get nailed down just right. The Bayou was one of the ones that came together fairly quickly. But in the end, basically, we didn't have any say in what the overall end product was. He just wanted pipe tobacco from us that we believed in and that we thought performed well, that he could blend around. And so
did he give you samples of cigar thoughts to smoke to then kind of marriage them together? So then what was that like for you? I mean, essentially he was asking you to build an engine for a vehicle that you don't know if it's going to fit in the engine compartment. You don't know how big the vehicle is, and you don't know if it's too big for the engine to move. So how does that work?
Well, without being too self-effacing or too industry-effacing, comparing tobacco blending to building an engine.
Oh no, I'm just saying you were essentially asked. Somebody said, "I want something," without giving you any guidance as to what it's going to be used with.
Right. So I understood that it was going to be used in a cigar, but what Steve wanted was for the filler of each cigar to be built around the component of the pipe tobacco that was going to be used in it. So he wanted the pipe tobacco first, and then he basically crafted the filler recipe for each of the four blends to work with that pipe tobacco. So he wanted the pipe tobacco first so that he could blend around it.
Okay, so he was taking it and doing all that himself.
That's right.
And you guys were supplying the blending as well as some of the aromatic stuff that you guys probably did. And I get you can't fully go into what's in it, but there was obviously an aromatic. And obviously you guys did some sort of a aromatic topping on top of that tobacco.
Essences, notes of vanilla and chocolate, and a handful of other things that sort of come through in that flavor.
So you're getting props. So this is Kevin Shahead of Cigar Prop, one of my personal mentors inside of this cigar world. And he's also a mechanic himself, and I'm really glad that he didn't throw out the whole engine thing and be like, that doesn't make sense. But so he says that's what a good engineer does. He builds something even though he may not understand where the part is going to end up going.
Well, I appreciate that. I still will say that blending pipe tobacco is nothing at all as complicated as building an engine. If you basically know, if you're familiar with the components that you're using, and you know what each of them tastes like on their own, and you know what each of them can do depending on proportions that you use, putting together, once you're familiar with, salt and pepper, it's fairly simple to know how to apply them when you're making even something as simple as stovetop, packaged mac and cheese. So like, I think that I think that basically my job is much less being like an engineer and much more being like my job is to be responsible for and well acquainted with the components and the materials that I'm working with, and know how those things fit together.
Jeremy is a very humble guy, but please do not let him fool you. That mind is packed with incredible tobacco knowledge that he has acquired. He's being incredibly humble, but this guy, after talking to him for as long as I have, randomly smoking what he has produced, he in his own right is a Steve Saka inside of the pipe tobacco world. So if you guys have not, dude, like I said, I'm a big fan, and I've really concentrated on Cornell and Diehl, because it's been a lot of fun going through the aromatic to the the chocolate, to this bow-legged bear, which I really would love to have on a shirt. But
it's a classic blend. I love that.
It is. Oh, it's fantastic, and it's a cake, right? No, not a cake.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a cake that you got to pull apart. Like the whole idea of pipes just fits my ADD absolutely beautifully. Yeah, it is a ritual to an extent.
Yeah, I have a friend who recently was not sure even the terminology. I don't know if they even use the term diagnosed, but found out that he was autistic, high functioning, but this was total news to him, and he told me that he felt like this revelation explained a lot of different things throughout his life that had been sort of mysterious, but he suddenly in the middle of this said, recently I've been thinking all of my pipe smoking stems from my desire to just keep stimulated. I'm literally stemming. Like every little fiddly thing is just a way to like take that need for stimulation and apply it to something that doesn't look so weird.
No, and I agree with, and I absolutely agree with that. Even to the point where, like, I don't know, like, there's a reason why those fidget things have taken off. There's a reason why those little pop-it things, like my 19-month-old, she loves them. Those take off because I actually find myself losing in whether I'm doing work, in a conversation, just fiddling with the pipe. And not even realizing what I'm doing at this point, but going, oh my gosh, I just packed a pipe. I didn't even realize I did that. But it kind of allows me to just forget about what the rest of my body's doing and just concentrate, because it's fiddling. I'm good. I'm not sitting there like, shaking my leg. So it's been kind of soothing and relaxing for me to go through this process of learning the pipe.
Yeah, that's really cool. And that's one of my favorite things about the hobby, is that it really is much more contemplative and soothing, often like isolated sort of experience. Whereas cigar smoking, which I also really enjoy, tends to be really gregarious. It's something that's easy to enjoy while you're having an argument, or you're like busting each other's balls in the shop or something. But with a pipe, you've got to pay attention to that. You've got to really shrink the world a little bit and really just focus on what is going on with you and with the pipe and with your immediate surroundings. And I think it's well more it's well more applicable to pipe smoking and like fishing, pipe smoking and like solitary hike or something like that.
Reading a book.
Reading a book, even watching a movie, but
Yeah.
it's much more internal.
Yes.
I feel,
Yes.
and
Yes.
so yeah, there's room in my world for both, but I really enjoy pipe smoking for some of those reasons.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, it's pipe smoking can be done much easier solo, but you can still do it at a party.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Whereas cigars is more seen as a more sociable experience.
Hmm.
Versus pipe is like it's just you and your buddy, and you're kind of just
Right,
hanging out, you
right.
know. So well, let's get into before we start really getting into the blending. A lot of what I've been talking about over the last year and a half or close to a year and a half is mentors. And
Hmm.
you had started off the show about you learning under somebody.
Hmm.
And you've run the gamut of different variations of types of jobs and everything else. So if you can kind of give everybody an understanding of what your thought is about either having a mentor or having a mentee, somebody that you are a mentor to.
Hmm. So I have had a lot of people that I have learned from um, over the time that I've worked in tobacco industry, worked in a lot of different kinds of foods as well. But as far as the time period that I was working with Ted Connolly, who was the previous head blender for Cornell and Diehl, the timeline of all of this was so fast. Um, it really and Ted, completely honest, Ted was not a pipe smoker.
Hmm.
Ted had been working at Cornell and Diehl, um, and basically had been good friends with Craig Tarler, who was the owner and founder, um, and kind of knew what Craig wanted out of a pipe blend. He understood what Craig's ideas were about flavor profiles. Craig did some blending, um, showed some things to Ted. Ted took these same kind of precepts and basically applied them, but he didn't smoke at all. And so, really learning from Ted was learning like how production works, what all of the what all of the processes are to make cube cut burley or to make uh, the ribbon cuts of different things that we did, um, how the intricate upstairs drying process uh, that they used, how that all worked, and basically it was just like me driving to Morganton, staying in a furnished apartment for 2 weeks at a time and working in Cornell and Diehl, and then coming back to South Carolina and working in customer service at Smoking Pipes for 2 weeks. And I did that back and forth for 6 months.
Wow.
Yeah, 2 weeks here, 2 weeks there, 2 weeks here, 2 weeks there. Um, and so yeah, I wish that I had some opportunity to have a real mentorship, but the reality was it was just like learn everything you possibly can about every aspect of this business, because at the end of this you're going to have to move this company from one state to another state and get it set up in a new building and get it back up and going again. um, that was kind of it was not slow and methodical and like everything we've been talking about with pipes. It was rambunctious, go go go, and yeah, an awful lot of adrenaline along the way.
So that's even more impressive then, because essentially you didn't necessarily learn how to do any of the blending from him other than the business process and how to cut and make the ingredients themselves, the raw ingredients, how you wanted. So a lot of it was
I worked with him through processing the recipe. We did production blending and things like this, but this was not
but he didn't go through the nuances.
We need 56 2-ounce tins of Bayou Morning.
Yeah.
Here is the written recipe card for Bayou Morning. Figure out, do your math to figure out how to make 56 2-ounce tins worth of it.
So then what was it like? So how many blends of Cornell and Diehl in the last 7-8 years you've been there have you created?
I don't know how many.
Would you say the majority of your line at this point is you?
No.
Okay.
So the time that I came on, like I said, Cornell and Diehl celebrated 30 years in business last year.
Yeah.
We have blends that were created by Craig Tarler, by his son Chris, who was with the company at the time that I came on, with Keith Toney, who transferred from Cornell and Diehl to go and work in the distribution side of things. But Keith had come up with some blends. There was probably in the neighborhood of 220, 230 Cornell and Diehl products, their brand and GLPs and a few other brands that they produced at the time that I came on. We are closer to 400 blends now.
So you have brought in a lot of your own spin on the blending to the Cornell and Diehl family.
Absolutely. There are a lot of blends in the line that I have helped to bring into sort of a better era. Oftentimes, I mean, there were things about Cornell and Diehl that I absolutely loved and that I always had, but there were definitely some things that were in need of help, were in need of work, and leaf selection was one of those. And so I've been really, really focused on trying to make sure the best quality tobacco that we can get, and making sure that we have lots of it and that we don't have issues of running out of it and having to, scramble to find whatever to make ends meet. Definitely over the years, there were times where I know that things like that did happen at Cornell and Diehl. But that's been part of my job as head blender, to make sure that we're using the best materials we can and that we have plenty of it.
Absolutely. And like I said, if you guys haven't had any sort of C&D or Cornell and Diehl blends, I strongly recommend. I'm actually just lit up the maple Cavendish. I've been really I've been really into the maple side of life. The autumn evening is by far my favorite of the aromatics, but that doesn't surprise you. It's the number one seller that you guys have. I want to kind of address a few questions here, and then we're going to get into the blending side. So Kevin from Cigar Prop asks, you use the term flavors inside of the in the cigar industry. That is a no term. Companies like to use the term infused. Can you kind of say why the pipe tobacco world uses the term flavor over infused?
So I don't think that I used the term flavored.
No, you didn't. You did.
But I did say that there were notes of or essences of vanilla and chocolate, and other things. So I think that
Well, you had mentioned that Steve said he likes your flavors in your tobacco. That's where that came from.
our flavor profile, like in
Oh,
general.
okay.
So like I would say that about unflavored cigars or unflavored pipe tobacco as well.
Okay.
I'm just referring to actually the flavor of the product, not not necessarily added flavors. Now, obviously in autumn evening, how does the maple flavor come to be there? It's because we put it on the tobacco, and there's no way around that. The FDA understands this. You know, we're allowed to do it.
No, for sure.
So yeah, we don't regard it as a no term because there's no other way to talk about it. I'm not sure that I understand fully why in cigars it's regarded one way, and when in pipe it is regarded a different way. Except that there are regulations on flavored cigars.
Correct.
Really, because they're trying to get after Phillies,
blunts,
Phillies grapes, and things like this, things that may be more accessible to kids. But yeah, I don't know if there's, I don't think there's probably a 14-year-old kid named Malcolm who like wears tweed and with like the suede patches on the elbow that is likely smoking autumn evening out of a calabash pipe and referring to his father as Jeeves or something.
We say the same thing about cigars.
I don't know that kid exists. I don't know that you're going to find anybody that's smoking like a CAO moon trance under age or whatever the case may be. I just don't think those types of products are at all angled towards kids any more than I think that marshmallow flavored vodka is something that like marshmallow flavored vodka is delicious, and if you have a sweet tooth, like there is a way to use that in a cocktail that is nice and that is thought-provoking. And yeah, adults turns out like desserts and things. So
no, absolutely. And part two to this is what Kevin asks here. So Kevin's a really big cigar guy. I don't know that he has a whole lot with pipes. So that question maybe came from maybe a misunderstanding of what goes into pipe tobacco. When you say maple, when you say honey, when you say whiskey flavor, these are actual flavors going in. But can you address this question here?
Yeah. So yes, there are definitely flavorings that we use, both flavorings that are designed to be to produce the flavor when smoked, as well as things that are things that you could find at your local grocer, or like honey or sugar or brown sugar or molasses. We use those kinds of things, but we also use things like chocolate flavoring or a vanilla flavoring or maple flavoring. We also use a whole bunch of different kinds of booze, and including marshmallow vodka.
So speaking of just some additional flavors here, are you a subscriber to the Zippo? I've been using a Zippo, and I don't see that it affects it a whole lot.
I don't think it does either. I think that the biggest effect that I notice when using a Zippo to light something is the smell. I definitely, noticed the lighter fluid smell initially. Sure. But as far as a flavor transfer where like now my pipe tastes like kerosene or something, I've never experienced that.
And then he asks here, how big a recipe do you make at one time? For instance, Kevin makes beard balm, really good beard balm. I see you have a beard.
I also, my girlfriend and I make our own beard balm and
perfect
lotions and mustache waxes and all those kinds of things.
Awesome. He
So
says
yeah.
it only scales up to a certain point and then it loses a little something. So I keep it batches small. Does pipe tobacco kind of fall into that?
Gotcha. So I'm not sure exactly what he's referring to in terms of his beard balm, but I assume that there you've got kind of a texture thing that you're trying to achieve, and past a certain batch size, it's hard to get everything to cool at the right time, um, or for the amount of flavoring, or I mean of flavoring aroma that you might have added. By the time things sort of congeal, maybe you wish there was a little more, but then you might break it if you try and add more essential oils afterwards. With pipe tobacco, basically, if you've got the recipe for 1 pound, you can make 50 pounds, you can make 100 pounds, you can make 1,000 pounds. um, Really, the limitations for our batch size are: one, how many blending tables do we have available, um, and how much of a particular kind of tobacco or blend of tobaccos can we get on each blending station, because everything we do is blended by hand.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got 12-foot long, 4.5-foot wide steel basins,
Mm-hmm.
basically, that you weigh out, whatever your base tobacco is, and you work your way smaller, um, to where you're adding the lightest or least component of the blend on top, so that then when you start mixing everything together, it's really easy to get everything to mix evenly and matriculate together. Um, so that's really the limitation that we look at, is like, I don't think I can get 80 pounds of white burley on this table, because white burley is an air cured tobacco that is generally very fluffy and not very dense. But I could probably get 80 pounds of Latakia on this table, no
Yeah.
problem. It's a heavier, darker, denser leaf. So those are really the kind of limitations that we run into. But as long as we're adding the quantities of things we're supposed to, you can really scale pipe tobacco blending pretty easily.
So just to kind of show you guys a little bit about the density that he's referring to, I'm going to see if I can make this work. This will be new for me. All right. So you can see, oh, that camera's off right now. So you can see that this comes all the way to the top. This is 1 ounce. This is
Yep.
this is in a 7 or an 8 ounce jar. This is 1 ounce of burley. This is white burley.
Yep.
And this is the Latakia. And there is definitely a big difference in 1 ounce. You can see it doesn't nearly come all the way up as much, and it's much tighter, it's much twistier than the burley itself. So
Absolutely. we're
Kevin
always
was
we're always
sorry, go ahead.
struggling. Oh no, I don't mean to cut you off.
No.
We're always struggling to get, like, for white burley ribbon and like the 1 pound bags. It's always a struggle to get all of that last 2 or 3 ounces into the Ziploc bag. Whereas most of our other bulk packages, there's plenty of room to fold the bag over the back, and like present it as a little square. But with white burley, it's nearly expanded in the whole bag.
No, I thought I got 2 ounces by accident when I saw it come in
Yeah.
comparison to the other bulk I bought. Kevin was wondering, do you sell or promote your lotions and such things that you make?
I don't. It's something that we have thought about and talked about doing, but honestly, it's just something that we both enjoy doing. We make our own soap. We don't buy bars of soap. We make our own bars of soap. They're literally just a bunch of different styles, a bunch of different approaches to soap, like that we have in Ziploc bags. And every couple of years, we make a huge run of 4 or 5 different kinds of soap, and then we just don't have to buy soap for a really long time.
All right, let's see if I can't make this work. This is the first time I'm using this like this to kind of be able to show what we're doing here.
Cool. So you have a capability I don't think that I am going to be able to replicate.
No worries, no worries. I paid too much for this ability, so.
Well, I also wasn't sure exactly how detailed we were going to be able to be. So I wanted to kind of talk with you about what components you had and how many of them you had actually smoked, and kind of get an idea of where you were sort of leaning um, with your
Sure.
preferences.
So after watching your videos, I decided that I was going to get a clay pipe
Very nice.
because that's what I saw you doing all of your tasting videos when you explained everything.
Mm-hmm.
I have smoked a bowl of everything I have.
Great. That's great.
I love the burley a lot because it was a lot of pepper, it was a lot of strength to it, especially that dark burley. I liked everything. Even the fire cured was a lot of fun to smoke. It was definitely pungent, but man, it was very good. I'm open to just learning kind of the basics of. I know a lot of fire cured is too much, or a lot of Latakia can be too much. So, kind of the basics around. All right, we're going to go with a gram of Red Virginia. We're going to go with a quarter gram of Latakia. Just kind of just a basic understanding of quantities.
Sure. So I will start off by saying that I don't think that there is any such thing as a hard and fast rule, especially when you are talking about home blending. To me, this is an opportunity for you to put something together that you think tastes good. And as a blender, that's what I pursue. I pursue putting together a blend that I find value in and enjoy smoking. And that's not to say that, I'm not always a big aromatic guy, or I'm not always a big Latakia guy, but I've got to be able to do those things. And so when I set out to blend an aromatic, or when I set out to blend a full English blend, I kind of take my own approach to it. So I think home blending is really all about not here's all the rules, but just like screw it. There are no rules. Like if I want to use 75% Latakia and, just a little dribble of dark burley because I really like the flavor of Latakia, but I want it to have more nicotine, there's nothing wrong with that.
Sure.
I think that coming into it with rules other than whether or not you like it is setting limits for yourself. So that said, I think that there are some precepts that might help. If you think about the place in your mouth that.
So I really, really like this.
Okay, yeah, Billy Bud.
And the Pegasus. If I wanted to, and you could complete your thought, but I just wanted to answer your question. If I wanted to kind of go, I'm looking for similarities of this in my home blend. How would I start to achieve this? But finish your thought originally.
Sure. So if you're looking for something like Billy Bud, you're going to need some cigar leaf. You are going to need some Latakia. You are going to need Bright Virginia.
I got red.
Okay. I don't know if you I don't know if you have cube cut. I think we've been out of it for a while, and we just recently restocked. But I don't know if we were out at the time that you picked up all of your blending components.
I do not have cube cut.
Okay, cube cut would be one that you would need, but I would say you're looking at like about a quarter of your total volume in Latakia.
Okay.
And then using small amounts of bright Virginia to just sprinkle in sweetness, and you're filling in the remainder with finding a balance between the cigar leaf, your white burley, and your dark burley.
Okay.
So yeah,
So
Latakia is your base, Virginia as your little top note, and the meat of it, the heart of it, that kind of works as your mid range is going to be between chopped cigar leaf, white burley, and dark burley.
okay. So if we're gonna be, for some reason, my camera's being a little weird, don't fully understand why, but it is what it is. All right. So maybe this won't work the way I want it to.
Okay.
I was hoping it would. All right. Okay. Anyway, so I have my scale in front of me. And if I'm telling you I would like something with a little bit more pepper, a little bit more higher nicotine, but with a little sweetness, where would you say I would start?
So I would say to start off, try and experiment with as little tobacco as possible. I would say making an ounce of something is probably making too much
Okay.
when you are just getting your ideas together about how to use your blending components. You probably want to use like no more than a quarter of an ounce at a time, so that like blend up a quarter of an ounce at a time, so that you're not using up all your blending components in experiments.
So what is that? 28 grams to an ounce.
So let's see here.
You're looking at around
we
8.
didn't think through the logistics of this.
You're looking at around 7 grams.
Okie doke. So, let's say you said 7 grams.
Yeah, well, a quarter of an ounce. An ounce is 28 grams. So a quarter of that would be 28 divided by 4. So that actually, that would
7.
be
You're right. You're
7,
right.
yeah.
Yep. All right. So, let's start off with 3 grams of Latakia.
Okay. Now, is this how you start your new blends? Is in small stuff like this?
Yes. So I start off with usually 3 just sketches of recipes where I work out in percentages what I think I want to start off with, and I'll make 3 different versions, just sitting down and sketching it out. And then I'll go and make those 3 versions, and make really tiny batches of them like this, and then make decisions based on my experiences from there, what I'm happy with, what I'm not happy with. Oh, actually I should use this Virginia instead of this one. But of course, when we're working with blending components that are commercially available, you don't have that option.
That's true.
So you kind of, we put out one red Virginia, we put out one bright Virginia, but in in our factory, I've got access to several different versions of these things.
Okay, so I have 3 grams
Of
now
Latakia.
of Latakia out. So let me set this aside.
Okay. Next, let's try 2 grams of your dark burley.
Okay, so while I'm weighing out 2 grams of dark burley, Kevin asks, "Hey Jeremy, have you ever been told something couldn't be done because it's already been tried, but did it anyways and figured out a way to make it work?" That happens a lot in the cigar world where people say that leaf will never make a wrapper or will never be anything but a small filler, or you can't find anything to blend with it.
I was never told that it would never work, but I was surprised that the first time I came across Casturi, that nobody had ever used it in pipe tobacco.
Now, what's Casturi?
Casturi is actually, it's used in some Indonesian cigars, and it's also used in clove cigarettes. It is an Indonesian tobacco that I had never heard of before I got a sample of it from a manufacturer that was sending me some cigar samples to smoke through. And yeah, the first time I smoked Casturi, I was like, this is crazy. Is like smoky and spicy, but like there's a sweetness that reminds me a little bit of Virginia, and there's a smoky element that kind of reminds me of Dark Fired a little bit, but not exactly. There's also some sort of like weird floral elements that remind me a little bit of Oriental. It was just very complex, but extremely spicy. And so, yeah, to my knowledge, we're the first pipe tobacco manufacturer that uses Casturi in any of our blends.
Wow. And you brought,
but nobody told me we couldn't do it. I just decided this was something that was cool to do and tried it.
Okay. So it was something that nobody's ever tried because they might maybe thought that it couldn't be done in a good smokable way.
I don't know. Yeah, I truly don't know why nobody, because I mean, I think it's delicious. You can experience Casturi in bluegrass, where it is paired with Virginia and Perique and Dark Fired. You can try it in Mad Fiddler Flake, which was inspired by my favorite H.P. Lovecraft story, The Music of Eric Zahn, where I also did kind of a weird sauce, a weird casing on that blend that I won't divulge, but suffice to say, it was a strange idea on my part that ended up working out. But yeah, Casturi is a totally new leaf to me. And the second that I tasted it, I was like, all right, we have to use this. We have to try to do something cool with this. So it's been fun to use. Well, there's Casturi and Folklore, which just launched yesterday at 6 p.m.
Yeah, I saw the marketing for that. That's one I definitely want to get my hands on. Well, Kevin kind of explains the reason why he asked. He goes, because he actually blended this. Are you familiar with Candela?
Yeah.
Okay, so Kevin made this really good cigar, a couple variations of them with different wrappers, and it had a Candela in the filler. Okay. And a lot of people said, oh, that can't be done. You'll never be done correctly. You'll lose the Candela. It doesn't make sense. It's not going to burn right. But he actually did find a way. So I think that's more or less what he was kind of getting at was.
That's cool.
So it was a really good, and he did it in what's called a buddy pack. So it was 6 cigars so you could give one to a buddy and smoke it together.
Wow.
It was a really good blend. I enjoyed it.
Very
It was
cool.
called Silent Green.
Silent Green.
Yeah.
I like it.
So
I like that. Kudos, Kevin.
Absolutely. And Kevin, I have dates on the jars because I have 23 different variations of Cornell and Diehl, and I would like to know at what point in time I have to maybe add water or a little spritz of something to bring it back to life. I don't think pipe tobacco has a shelf life if kept properly.
Nope.
Okay.
In fact, I would say the opposite. I have really enjoyed smoking, in particular, Virginia and Virginia Perique tobaccos that were 30 or 40 years old.
He asks, is there a pipe tobacco equivalent to Candela?
So
Skip.
No, not quite the same way, but you might really enjoy Oriental, and in particular, there are some grades of Oriental. You can kind of see it in this, that there's a little bit of a green hue. It's sort of like an olive tone.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a blend of a few different primings of Oriental leaf from Greece and from Izmir, but your upper primings on Oriental, and in particular for some reason in the Izmir, the upper primings, they cure so quickly, and they are such new growth that you have a lot of chlorophyll that remains. So it your grade on the top is AG, and it's A because it's the very top of the plant, but G stands for green. And your tips on Oriental are really tiny leaves. They're really compact. They're really oily, and so they don't cure out to a brown color quickly. And with Oriental, it's just sun cured. So it sun cures in like 5 or 6 days, and it stays relatively green. And it has some really nice creamy, kind of like matcha sort of flavors. So kind of grassy. There's some spicy elements to it too. But if you like the flavor of Candela, I imagine that you would really enjoy Izmir Grade AG.
So there you go, Kevin. If you're looking for, Kevin's got a lot of really nice high-end like Drew Estate pipes and some Drew Estate tobacco. Now, before anybody comments, yes, in tribute of who we have on, I'm wearing my Saka bed pants, my Saka squatches.
Nice.
Okay. So
Cool.
This is just in tribute. So before anybody asks what these are, yes, I understand. But guess what? I only have to look good from here up. Okay. So, but yes, these are worn specifically for tonight because of who we're talking with and the cigar that they made. Okay. So we have 2 ounces or 3 ounces Latakia. We have 2 ounces dark burley.
Yep.
And
so
then what?
We're going to go not ounces, right? Grams.
Or grams. I'm sorry. 3 grams Latakia, 2 grams dark burley.
Right. So we've still got chopped cigar leaf, white burley, and bright Virginia to go, right?
Yeah, I got the red Virginia, not the bright.
Oh, okay. All right. So I think then we're gonna need to go cigar leaf next.
Okay. What are we looking at?
And we'll do 1 gram.
Now, what kind of cigar leaf is this?
So that is actually a blend of Dominican Criollo and Italian dark air cured cigar.
And you
So
said a
it's,
gram.
yes, 1 gram.
Okay. I could see why this is addicting for some people doing this. Like it's literally, if you're a cook, like I could see people really getting into this. I wanted this show because I want to get into this. Like this just seems fun to kind of pick and choose what you want.
So
In it.
do you have the ability on that scale to do half a gram?
Oh yeah.
Okay. If you can do half a gram of your white burley.
Okay. And just
And
to show everybody the difference between dark and white, because there is actually quite a difference in my opinion. But you could see this one's a little lighter. This one's got more darker cuts in it.
it's
This
also
one
denser.
It's also much denser. Yes.
Yeah.
All these are 1 gram, people. It looks like a ton, but I swear it's all 1 gram, and it doesn't even fit into my 7 or 8 ounce jars.
One. You mean
Or
1 ounce, right?
1 ounce. Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry. All right. Ounces, grams. I'm getting confused.
I know. Well, we both are. So I just want to make sure that folks at home are not like, man, a gram of tobacco is.
No, yeah, no, it's not a gram. I will say though, pipe tobacco is less expensive
Oh
than
yeah.
cigars.
Yep.
Okay, so there's a half.
All right, and then we've got a half a gram left on to use up for red, right? And that gets us to our 7.
Okay. So this is red. Now they say you should mix a deck of cards 6 times and it's fully mixed.
Mm-hmm.
How much do you actually mix this to be considered fully mixed?
So one of the things that I pay attention to, and it's much more important when you're looking at like a big batch of something, is all of the colors of your components, and just making sure that every time that you sort of bring your hands up from the bottom of the blending table towards your face, that you are seeing those colors evenly dispersed like they would be in a kaleidoscope.
Okay.
So there's no, I think that from here that looks a little bit like I see some dark kind of clumping on that side. That, think you got it. That looks even to me.
Awesome. So let's
Does it look even to you?
Looks even to me.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I'm getting dark across the whole thing, light across it. It looks like it's going pretty good.
So this is not by any stretch Billy Bud, but specifically you said that you were looking for something that was maybe a little spicier, a little darker.
Correct.
And so I wanted to see how this proportion of Latakia and dark burley did for you. I do wish that we had something with a little more sugar to it than the Red Virginia.
I would have absolutely bought Bright Virginia, but I didn't see it.
Gotcha. But I would be interested to see your thoughts on basically the same rundown if you swapped out the Red Virginia for Bright Virginia.
Now, a little less sweetness in my non-aromatics I like.
Mm-hmm.
But because this is primarily, we are originally they use Criollo in pipe tobacco.
Yes,
absolutely. Sir. If somebody was to ask you, Jeremy, I'm a big cigar guy. I've smoked the Stillwell. I want to get into pipes, but I want a blend of Cornell and Diehl, or a couple blends that maybe you could offer up right now,
mm-hmm.
that are very cigar-esque, similar in punch, in retro, hail, feel, what are those that you would offer up?
Sure. I think there are a lot of cigar guys that like you have been enjoying Burley. Notice some flavor characteristics and some overall body characteristics that are similar between Burley and Cigar. We use cigar leaf in a lot of different blends. Billy Bud, of course, being one of them. But I think that there's a blend that really has a lot of cigar-like characteristics to it that doesn't actually contain any cigar leaf. It's called Riverboat Gambler. And it is Virginia and Oriental and dark Burley and Perique. But it is a cigar kind of flavor profile to me. It is a pipe blend that I think would be very apt as a cigar flavor profile. If I lit up a cigar and it tasted that way, that would make sense to me. So yeah, Riverboat Gambler would be one that I would definitely recommend to anybody who is looking for a cigar experience and a pipe.
Riverboat, that's on my list now too. I'm gonna have to start taking notes myself. So tell everybody why I'm smoking out of this versus this.
Well, whenever I am developing a blend, I want to make sure that my first experiences of flavor are as pure and unsullied as they can possibly be. And out of a briar pipe, one of the wonderful things about a briar pipe is that it builds a flavor because the wood absorbs oils from the tobacco that gets smoked in it. So it is possible, if there are added flavors on tobaccos that you smoke through your pipe, for those flavors to leave behind a characteristic flavor we call a ghost. But even with pipes that, like, I have a pipe that only smokes Virginia and Virginia Perique blends. I have a pipe that only smokes Latakia and blends with Latakia in it. I have a pipe that I only smoke straight Virginias out of that never sees Perique. And so you can kind of control the amount of flavor that or the type of flavor that each of your briar pipes develop by really dedicating and targeting what you smoke in them. But out of a clay pipe, that's completely inert. There's nothing that can really leave behind a characteristic flavor. The clay is pretty. It's like listening to studio headphones. Like, there's no color. It's just flat sound. And so this is the cleanest way to just taste the blend you've put together and not any other nuances or flavors that are residing in the thing that you're smoking out of.
So why is it, and by the way, everybody, I'm looking down because I am writing the blend that we just did on my lid. And then later, Jeremy and I are going to talk about maybe coming up with a show blend for the show. But no, that's years down the road. Anyways, why is it important to have different variations of pipes? Because I'll be honest with you, I don't have a lot of pipes. I smoke my aromatics out of all of my pipes. I smoke everything out of all of my pipes. Why would what I'm doing, and trust me, I would love to have enough pipes to not do that, but why is it important to make that only dedicated pipe?
So I don't know that I'm going to make the argument that it's important, because I can't tell you what you should be doing with your pipe hobby. but it's important to me to keep the flavors that go into a particular pipe consistent, so that I have a better experience of what each of those kinds of blends are when I put it in a pipe that doesn't have a hint of vanilla lingering in the background. Um, you know what I'm saying? Like if I'm smoking a straight Virginia flake and I put it in a pipe that has seen a bunch of Latakia, I am going to miss out on a lot of the subtlety and complexity of that Virginia flake, because the flavor of Latakia will be noticeable and palpable in that pipe. If I smoke a bunch of not Orientals but aromatics in a wood pipe, especially if I smoke a bunch of different aromatics, over time you've got maple from one blend and vanilla from another blend and cherry from this blend and chocolate from that blend. It just gets muddier and muddier the more new things you put through the pipe. Keeping your pipe clean will help with some of this, but a pipe that has seen a bunch of added flavoring in large quantity, like a true aromatic over and over again, if you take something that is a straight Virginia flake that's very delicate and very nuanced, and you try and smoke it in that pipe, it's going to taste a lot like everything else you've smoked in that pipe more than what you are smoking currently. Does that make sense?
When you have a few aromatic pipes, do you have like a maple pipe? Do you have a honey pipe, a whiskey pipe? Or does the aromatic part of it not necessarily matter? It's the fact of smoking other non-aromatics out of that aromatic pipe.
So I like to play around some with this. So I have a pipe that only smokes autumn evening, and I don't smoke anything else out of that pipe. I have other pipes that I will smoke flavored tobaccos in, as long as they're not like really goopy flavored tobaccos, like really heavily flavored tobaccos. And I'll smoke just about any of those in that pipe. Then I have a couple of pipes that are for smoking more heavily flavored tobaccos, things that I may be needing to smoke to assess, but probably not things that I'm going to find myself loving so much that I'm going to dedicate a pipe to it. I have corncob pipes for this. I have clay pipes to work with individual components, or to work with a blend that I'm putting together. But once I am happy with a blend, I switch immediately from smoking in a clay to smoking in whatever briar pipe is appropriate, because that's how most people are going to enjoy the tobacco, is out of a briar pipe.
Well, I tell you, I like this. It hits that spice and that retrohale, that pepper's coming through really nice. There's just a little bit of a tinge of a sweetness to it, very, very small.
Mm-hmm.
Overall, this is definitely a heavier bodied blend of a pipe tobacco.
We could
very
have
similar to the Billy Bud, but I
to
think
the
a
Billy
little
Bud
heavier. But I think a little heavier, maybe because I don't have the bright Virginia.
Because you don't have the bright Virginia, and also because I kind of kicked up the dark burley in this and toned down the white burley component in this. So your cigar leaf and your white burley are kind of playing your
range.
Your Latakia is your bass, but your dark burley is your baritone, and I kind of kicked up the baritone portion.
Ooh, I like that. I actually am very, very happy with that. Probably going to play. So once you find a core blend and somebody says, "Hey, I found something that I like where I'm going," do you tell people to add just little smidges of stuff for differences, or like I wouldn't have known to pair those together if I didn't look at the lid.
Mm-hmm.
Did I know what these tobaccos are? So do you tell people, hey, look at a blend you like and then just play with the proportions of that tobacco?
That's definitely how I started. Like, I started blending just as a home blender. And I became enamored of a certain flavor profile that I would find in a pipe tobacco, and I would just pick the blend apart physically and try and get all of the tobaccos that were of similar color grouped together to see if smoked on their own I could tell what it was.
Yep.
And so, okay, I think this is bright Virginia that's just been pressed for a long time or something, and it got
Sure.
this darker color, but it tastes like bright Virginia on its own. Or, oh, this is, this black is Perique or whatever. And so I started kind of getting an idea that way from deconstructing blends that I enjoyed, and trying to understand them better. And then buying blending components and trying to replicate them myself.
You're like a chemist in that sense, but it really
bit,
is chef-like in that essence. I want to really quick just kind of go over. We're going to just take a few minutes on each individual component. So that way, if anybody is looking to blend on their own, they can just kind of get an understanding of the flavor profiles of each one. So go to Latakia.
Ryan,
go ahead.
Sure. Give me just a second. My computer just screamed at me that it's about to die. I'm going to go grab a cord real quick. I thought I'd be able to make it through. Sorry, man. I'll be right back.
Yeah, dude, not a problem at all. So until Jeremy gets back, this is something, guys, that I would absolutely recommend if you're into cigars. And obviously you don't get the luxury of home blending your cigars, but you do get the luxury of buying all the individual components. And by the way, I have 8 individual components, and there's a lot that I did not get. And of the 8 individual components that I bought, I think it's like $30 worth, $35 worth of tobacco for these 8 individual components. And if you are able to do that, then you're going to be able to really kind of play around with your own little blending. And the reason why I write the blends on top of each jar is because then I can go back through and go, okay, this has these 4. Let me just play with all the components. As somebody that's just recently in the last month has dived really, really heavily into pipe tobacco, it's been a lot of fun to just kind of play and learn all the different variations and complexities and the flavors of each one of these tobaccos, because there's a lot of flavor complexity. Jeremy, your camera's off. There's a lot of flavor complexity inside of all of these. And I would say that the strongest flavor profile of any of these individual blends would have to be the dark fire cured. I mean, that one is, if I was drinking a scotch, damn it, I wish I would have, from the Islay section or the Isles section, however you want to pronounce it, it would have almost been indistinguishable between what I was smoking and what I was drinking. It was that great of a profile. So, Jeremy, I want to kind of go through real quick before we get into the wrap-up section of the show. I'm going to throw each individual component in front of you, and I would like for you to kind of break down the flavor profiles and complexities and strength of each one in a few minutes each. So we'll start with the Latakia. And Latakia, tell her, because Latakia is the one that's not an actual tobacco. It is a prep style.
Right, as a process.
Yes.
So Latakia is named for the city in Syria. I we say Latakia all the time, and I do it too, but really the pronunciation is correctly Latakia, which is how they pronounce the name of the city in Syria. Latakia or Latakia is basically Oriental tobacco that has been fire cured over aromatic woods for a long, long period of time. We used to see Latakia or Latakia that would be fire cured for between 5 and 6 months. Thankfully, there was a company in Turkey who started producing Latakia, and they developed a different way of approaching the fire curing, and were able to reduce that time down, because fire curing something for 5 to 6 months consumes a large amount of wood. And it was honestly something that was ecologically unsustainable, and has been a problem in Syria when Latakia was produced there, as well as in Cyprus, and even in Turkey. So I'm glad that we've got an ability now, a technological ability, to get the amount of penetration of smoke without all of that time. But it's very, very densely smoky. But the leaf itself doesn't have a whole lot of nicotine to it. It has moderate sugar, and then just this really, really prominent sort of campfire-y kind of aroma. It reminds me a little bit of Buddhist temple incense or frankincense and myrrh.
So, by the way, everybody, this is the blend that we did on the show. If you guys would like to have the recipe of it, I'll leave it right here. It's 3 gram Latakia, 2 gram dark, half gram cigar, half gram red, 1 gram white to give us 7 grams. And you could see 7 grams. I mean, that's a couple pipes.
Yep.
So I'm going to have fun playing around with that. Jeremy, thank you so much for that. So as we go through, so next up we have chopped cigar. Actually, you know what? Since we also have another fire cured and Latakia's fire cured,
sure.
Explain to everybody the difference between dark fired Kentucky and what makes it different than Latakia and the flavor profile.
Sure. So dark fired Kentucky, where Latakia is one of your least nicotine laden leaves, dark fired is some of the strongest tobacco I've ever encountered. Mm-hmm. It's not uncommon to see Latakia with nicotine percentage of less than 1%. It's not uncommon to see dark fired Kentucky with nicotine percentage of 4.5% or even 5%. One time I saw a 6%. That is the highest nicotine percentage I've ever seen on any tobacco. And it was dark fired. It is grown in Kentucky. The leaves are gigantic. The process of curing is done over hardwoods in a wooden barn that gets closed up, and basically a smoldering fire is built in the base of the barn. And the fire has to be continually kept going for between 14 and 16 days. And yeah, because it's hardwoods, the leaf really smells a lot like barbecue. I think it reminds me a lot of the smell of a smoker. And it is strong. It is strong in its flavor. It's strong in its smoky character, but it's also very, very strong in nicotine. A little bit of dark fired can really go a long way in a blend, using 5% or so is enough to make its presence known typically. Whereas with Latakia, you typically typically might see higher than 5% before a lot of people pick up on it. Some people will definitely pick up on it, but I feel like dark fired is a little punchier.
Now I'm changing out my camera here because my other camera was just like yours, telling me that it was going to end its life soon.
Goodbye,
So
cruel world.
correct, yeah. So now you guys get a better shot of the crotch and the socket pants. All right, so that's that. So let's go into the cigar leaf. Well, actually, you said this was what? You said Criollo.
So it's Criollo and Italian cigar. The
Okay.
Italian cigar leaf is like really, really deeply earthy, and the Criollo has a little bit more of a cinnamon and nutmeg kind of spicy element to it. A little bit more of a mid range. There are earthy elements, but there's also leather and spice and woody notes to it. The Italian stuff is like really, really deep and dark and rich and just like all about the mud. And so the two really blend nicely together to create something that's got a big full bass note, but that doesn't skimp on some of the mid and high notes either.
Okay. So it's a little bit more than just your typical cigar leaf that a cigar smoker would smoke because of the Italian leaf in there.
Yes, I think so.
So go into the white burley, and we'll address the dark burley at the same time.
Okay, so white burley is a style of tobacco that is light air cured. It tends to be upper stalk position on the plant, and tends to be a little mellower in its flavor. I'm sorry, it tends to be mid stalk position on the plant, and it tends to be mellower in its flavor. Dark burley is much more upper stalk and richer, fuller flavor, and it goes through a secondary fermentation process, similar to the kind of Pilon fermentation that a lot of cigar tobacco goes through. With dark burley, this is done in piles or in bales, but it's a similar concept. And that secondary fermentation process creates a little bit of a characteristic that always reminds me of like red wine and cloves.
I could see that when I was smoking that. I could see it's got a little bit more body to it.
Yeah, it's definitely deeper. It's got some more pepper to it. White burley, initially there's some spiciness to it, but once you get it lit and you're just puffing, honestly, it's like milk, like chocolate milk if you took all the sugar out of it.
Yep, I could see that. When I actually smoked some white burley this morning, so I could see where you're getting at with that. It's definitely less pungent than the dark.
Mm-hmm. It's creamy, and there's still nuttiness to it and some chocolate to it, but there's no sugar at all to the flavor profile. It's like no sweeter than like half and half.
So, fun fact about about the burley, at least, I actually had Hector Alfonso Jr. or Senior from Espinosa Lazona Cigars, or Lazona Factory, but Espinosa Cigars, and they actually blended. He has a few that he said he was going to send up a couple to me to try, but they used burley as the wrapper.
Oh, interesting.
So if I could get my hands on a few, I'll send one your way.
Very cool.
Because I think that would be interesting. That would pack a punch.
Yeah, it definitely would.
For sure. Would absolutely pack a punch. So let's continue on. We've got the long cut Perique, and then let's go with the Cavendish.
Okay. So Perique is one of the rarest tobaccos in the world. There are less than 60 acres total that are grown in St. James Parish, Louisiana, where Perique comes from. There are a handful of farmers down there who basically have been producing Perique, passed down from generation to generation for a long, long time. And we work directly with one of the farms there to have a pure product that is all grown in St. James Parish, Louisiana, made by 31 farms. Perique is not only a leaf strain, but is also a process. So the Perique seed actually traces its lineage back to the Choctaw and Chickasaw Indians of the Golden Triangle area of St. James Parish. And the seed that the farmers are using to this day is that heirloom seed that traces its lineage back to the 1700s or so, and probably earlier than that. It's just the first time the Europeans came across this practice and these folks. But basically, what the natives in that area would do with their tobacco is once they had harvested, they would hang it in the sun for a few days, and then they would dunk it in water, roll it up, and pack it into a hollowed out log. And then they would drop big stones into the end of the log on top of the tobacco, and they would take another log and ram those stones and the tobacco down into the hollowed out log, and then they would dig a hole, bury this in the earth, and leave it buried for a year. Then they would dig it up, and the fermentation that had taken place in this anaerobic environment that they had created had turned the tobacco jet black, given it all sorts of strange, fruity, but also funky aromas and flavors that it hadn't previously had, increased its strength a bit, and they would use this tobacco as their ceremonial tobacco. And so as the story goes, a Frenchman observed this practice of the natives and was like, what's the difference between a hollowed out log and a whiskey barrel? And what's the difference between, some big boulders and, ramming that in like you're loading a cannon with another log? And we're building railroads. We've got screw jacks. And so they just kind of figured out a way to industrialize this process to achieve the same results. And so, yeah, they called it Perique.
Now, if you guys want to see a very interesting video, jump over to Cornell Diehl's YouTube page, and you can actually watch Jeremy pop a casket or a cask of Perique and break it apart. And my God, he is straining to break that apart because effectively it's a giant tobacco cake.
Yep.
It's literally this, but all one type that you're trying to
500 pounds 500 pounds of tobacco packed into a cask.
And it's very interesting to watch that video. So let's move to Cavendish and then really, really quickly do Red Virginia and the Ismar.
Okay, sure. So Black Cavendish, the one that you've got here, this is another one that's a little confusing because Black Cavendish can be a lot of different things. But the specific Black Cavendish that we use for our bulk Black Cavendish, and it's used in a lot of the blends that we produce, is actually made from cigar leaf. So it is produced in the Dominican Republic, and the tobacco that is used to produce this Black Cavendish is basically the scrap and cut ends from this factory's cigar making, and they basically use their cuttings and things, press it, and cut it into ribbon and steam it to turn it into Black Cavendish. Black Cavendish has typically had some combination of heat, steam, and pressure applied to it, and it a lot of times is air cured leaf, which doesn't usually have much sugar on its own. So it's leaf that has been cased with some kind of sweetener, so that then through the application of heat, steam, and pressure, those sugars can caramelize and turn black. It is a way to reduce nicotine in leaf, and kind of cook out some of the characteristic flavors that the tobacco naturally has, and make it very absorbent, which can be useful if you want to use added flavorings, but it can also be really useful to leave it unflavored and use it in a blend where you want to spread some flavoring around. So like if I've got a blend that has a large percentage of Perique in it, and I really like the flavor of Perique, but it's too spicy, or I feel like the Perique flavor is too compact in the blend, a little bit of Black Cavendish can help to spread that flavor out and move it across the palate more evenly, so that it's not such a big punch. It kind of gives you some breathing room and lets some of the nuances of a tobacco come through. Black Cavendish can be used to great effect that way in small quantities.
I love that maple Cavendish. I just gotta say, I know that's not Black Cavendish, but that maple Cavendish.
No, there is Black Cavendish in that blend.
Black in that one, yeah.
Yep.
Now we went over the Izmir. Go over the Red Virginia real fast, and then we'll kind of jump into a few final questions, and we'll wrap the show up.
Okay, sounds good. Red Virginia, in this instance, this is grown in eastern North Carolina. The darker Virginias tend to come from upper stalk position on the plant. Brighter Virginias come from middle or lower stalk positions on the plant, and those are picked earlier. So Virginia is the only tobacco varietal that is grown in this country that is harvested in primings, like they do with cigar leaf. So Red Virginia comes from your upper stalk position. You tend to have less sugar in those leaves, but more nicotine and more oil. It is sweet, but not overpoweringly so, not overtly so. It is rich and nicotine laden, but not nearly as strong as something like Dark Fired Kentucky. And Red Virginia is great to use in a pure Virginia blend in cooperation with Bright Virginia, or even on its own. In fact, I really love using multiple different varieties of Red Virginias together in a blend. But they have hay-like characteristics and molasses kind of sort of deep sweetness. They go really nicely with whiskey. They are not overt in their flavors. They're very subtle. They're very complex.
Yeah, and the Autumn Evening is mainly Virginia,
which we've turned into Black Cavendish.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's Red Virginia that has been cooked into a Red Virginia Cavendish.
Yeah.
And then it has maple and vanilla and caramel and scotch that have been applied to the tobacco while it's still hot.
And it is as mouth-watering as it sounds. Absolutely. I want to address a question here that was made. So we've seen an influx of female cigar smokers. For instance, my wife, and I talked about this. My wife loves the Stillwell line. Absolutely loves the Stillwell line. She's gotten into cigars very much. Do you see that same transition of women pipe smokers as of late?
Yes. So I would say that we have seen more female pipe smokers, also more female pipe makers um, in the last several years. Um, and really, pipe smoking in general is trending younger
Mm-hmm.
than it, I mean, used to be that our median uh, pipe smoker was probably in his 60s.
Wow.
And I think it's more like the median pipe smoker is in his 40s.
Wow.
And we see a lot of guys that are in their 30s or even in their 20s and going to college that are really getting into pipe. Um,
Now,
so
do you see a lot of people that do both cigars and pipes? I mean, do they kind of cross over well?
there's a lot of crossover between the two. We are seeing a lot more cigar smokers that are actually beginning, like yourself, to get into pipes in a real way. Also, seeing a lot of cigar cigar brand owners that either have always been pipe smokers and it's just been kind of on the DL and they're beginning to kind of explore that more openly, or um, cigar brand owners that never really messed with pipe at all that are beginning to get into it. Uh, Robert Caldwell uh, has started smoking a pipe pretty seriously. In fact, the last 2 or 3 times that I've seen him, he'll smoke a cigar and then he'll smoke a pipe, and like kind of back and forth and back and forth. So yeah, we're seeing crossover from that way. But on the pipe side, I think that's been very common for a long, long time. A lot of pipe smokers smoke pipes and cigars to varying degrees, and you see a lot of pipe smokers gravitate more towards cigars in the warmer months because I feel like pipe smoking really is better suited to colder months.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah,
Well, yeah, it's not a
there's a lot of
huge length of commitment,
yeah, right,
for the cold.
right,
So we're going to throw at you some lightning questions
okay,
here that I throw at pretty much everybody with a slight little tweak, as you are in the pipe universe more so than the cigar world. But I am curious, what is your favorite cut to use on a cigar when you do smoke?
So I have been carrying the same pair of Zycar scissors for I don't know how long. I don't use anything else.
So straight
Uh,
cut.
yep, straight cut, and yeah, I love these things. They take up no room in my pocket, and I've
Oh
been
yeah,
carrying them forever.
awesome. What is your favorite standalone pipe leaf or process, meaning Latakia or Cavendish?
It's changed a few times, but I feel like right now my favorite standalone pipe leaf, like my favorite component to just smoke on its own, is probably Oriental at this point.
Little smoother, little milder, little
It's
bit
so
more.
delicate. It's so like complex. There's fruity elements. There's tea like elements. There's honeyed elements. There's floral elements. I really like smoking Oriental blends. I'm in the process right now of smoking through some samples of a few different grades of Oriental from different regions, and trying to figure out some things that we want to purchase, and just smoking through these samples has been delightful.
What is the best way for somebody like me that doesn't have a lot of pipes, that uses pipes intermittently between tobaccos,
Mhm.
when I do get the enough where I could be like, this is for this is for this is for this? What is the best way to clean those older pipes that you've been smoking everything out of?
Sure. So my recommendation is to use pipe cleaners all the time. After every smoke, you should take a pipe cleaner and run it through the airway of your pipe. Once, pull it out, turn it around, put the other end through, and then bend the pipe cleaner into sort of a U shape and put it down into the bowl of the pipe and scrub out the bowl of the pipe. After that, then I would take another fresh pipe cleaner and do just as you just showed. Put that into the airway and store it there until the next time that you're going to pick that pipe up and pack it and smoke it. But keeping your pipe clean and dry between smokes will mitigate a lot of the sort of flavor saturation and transfer that can lead to ghosting. But still, if you smoke things that are heavily flavored, either with an added flavor or something that is heavily just has a heavy flavor, particularly Latakia. Latakia will make its presence known after just a few smokes in a pipe.
When you do smoke a cigar, what is your favorite wrapper? Now, you could give me musician or you could give me cigar wrapper or both. But when
Okay.
you do go with a cigar, what is the wrapper that you have a tendency to float more towards?
I really like Connecticut, and I particularly like Ecuadorian Connecticut. I also like Ecuadorian Habano. And then rapper, man, Gangstar.
What is your favorite pairing with most tobaccos?
I think almost anything smoke wise will go well with some whiskey. I really enjoy, yep. Hard to go wrong with whiskey and a Glencairn.
No, it's very easy.
I like scotch a lot. I like bourbon. Um, I like a lot of different styles of each of these. But yeah, in general, I enjoy smoking with some sort of whiskey.
So, if you had to choose one C&D blend for the rest of your existence on this planet, as it sits right now, what would it be? It's a tough one.
It is right now. Right now, if it was possible for me to only smoke anthology, I would be smoking that. Unfortunately, it was a limited edition, so
Yeah, that's what I couldn't get a hold of.
yeah.
I tried. I looked everywhere. Couldn't get a hold of it.
Yeah, but yeah, in your desert island scenario where the rules aren't the rules, yeah, I would probably smoke anthology happily for the rest of my life.
Do you age pipe tobacco the way people age cigar tobacco?
Yes. I also age cigars. So the nice thing about aging pipe tobacco is that basically if you buy it in a 2-ounce tin or an 8-ounce tin, it's already in a container to age well, and you don't have to do anything else to it. You don't have to keep buying Boveda packs. You don't have to keep, having nightmares in the middle of the night that something bad is happening in your humidor or something like that. Yeah, basically if you buy tobacco in a tin, just put it in the back of a closet and forget about it for a decade, and it's good. If you buy tobacco in bulk and you want to age it, put it in a mason jar. If you open a tin of tobacco and you're smoking, you're smoking 2 or 3 bowls out of it, and then you decide that you want to open something else and you want to come back to this, just transfer that tobacco to a mason jar, cinch the lid down tight, label it, date it, and again, feel free to just forget about it for a while. It will have blossomed and changed undoubtedly when you remember and come back to it later.
Now, my guess is you're going absolutely nowhere over at C&D. You'll be there probably up until retirement, if not later. How would you like the tobacco world when you're done and gone and somebody else is in your place? How would you like the tobacco world to remember you?
Oh man.
That's real philosophical right there for you, Jeremy.
That is very philosophical. To me, the most important thing about anything that I've really loved doing, and really that's broken down to either working with tobacco or working with food. But my favorite aspects of both of these things are that they are things that are meaningful reprieves for people, and that they bring people together. So yeah, hopefully I can be remembered as somebody who put together some blends that brought people some joy and some enjoyment and some peace, and brought folks together in some sort of meaningful way.
Awesome. I love it. I love it. And last question of the night. If you, well, you know what? I'm going to change the last question because I didn't get to this. P-lip or no P-lip? I told you I was going to ask that.
Yeah. So
explain to everybody really quick in case they're watching.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
What that is.
So the P-lip is a Peterson design that basically this is an example of a standard pipe mouthpiece. So you can kind of see, let's see here. There we go. Yeah. So it's flat. The hole goes straight back towards the back of the mouthpiece. So when you are puffing on the pipe, it is directing smoke straight back into your mouth, directly on your tongue. The P-lip idea is basically where the airway goes up towards the top, and it directs smoke towards the roof of your mouth. The idea, I think, was to mitigate tongue bite, which if you puff too heavily on your pipe, if you pack too tightly, if you smoke wet, all of these kinds of things, then undoubtedly tongue bite will come to get you sooner or later. And it's basically a chemical burn right on the tip of your tongue. But so the P-lip idea was basically a way to mitigate tongue bite. For me, I find the P-lip design difficult to keep clean because now to run a pipe cleaner through my stem, I have to go down and then get it to go straight. It's really hard to make that deep curve. Makes it really difficult to clean a pipe without taking it apart. Like in the instance where you've maybe got some gurgling in the bottom of the chamber and you want to just use a pipe cleaner real quick, but you don't want to take your pipe apart because it is still warm and you don't want to break your shank. So yeah, I don't find the pipe with a P-lip to be, for me, the right fit.
Since we touched P-lip, is the Peterson system a gimmick or does it work?
I have never smoked a Peterson system pipe. I know some people who swear by them. But to me, the whole purpose of any of these kind of gimmicks or design changes is that they're trying to figure out a way around the smoke becoming wet, right? Mm-hmm. They're trying to prevent the tobacco that's not yet burning from getting wetter and wetter and wetter and building up a little pool of moisture in the bottom of the pipe. To me, the Peterson system basically creates a new chamber for moisture to get into and makes this a more complicated situation all around. I find that if you're running into problems of moisture building up in the bottom of your pipe, that tells you should dry your tobacco out a little bit before you pack it. That tells you you might be packing too tightly. That tells you you might be smoking too quickly. So there are things you can do to mitigate this with just a standard traditional design of a pipe. And I think that the system or other things like this maybe complicate the issue and create new avenues where the problem can be exacerbated. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. So it's a cool fix. And for those of you that don't know what the Peterson is, it's essentially an air valve coming up from the bowl and then a separate container right here that the liquid would fall in and evaporate or cook off. So that way you're only getting the smoke up of it. To me, it makes me feel like maybe if you don't clean it all the time, you might get mold in the bottom of that section if there's a liquid in there, so not to say that they're bad or that I wouldn't buy one. They look great, but definitely thinking and looking more into that to see if that's something that I want to kind of go down that avenue to try. So, well, Jeremy, thank you so much for joining me on my show. I hope you had a great time. I hope I gave you some questions that maybe you typically don't get on an interview, and I really appreciate you being so reachable with just questions. You've never made me feel like you've wanted to rush off with talking to me, even though we've been on some long conversations, and I really truly appreciate that. You will always have a home here at the Rocky Mountain Cigar Show. So is Cornell Diehl. And just to show everybody real quick, while I really can't, I'm not even kidding when I say, well, let me try to see if I can do this. I'm not kidding when I say those are all Cornell Diehl. Nice. I am going through as much as I can. I'm having a great time doing it. If you have not tried the Stillwell Star by Steve Saka, Dunbarton Tobacco and Trust, definitely get over and try it. It is going to be the best blended pipe tobacco cigar I promise that you guys will ever have. So definitely check that out. Jeremy, thank you again. And until we see you again next week, which next week I have, let me see. Next week we have coming on the show, we've got Marvin Benavides of Benavides Cigars. So that'll be a great episode as well. So until we see you all again, smoke what you like, smoke as often as you can, and have a great rest of your week. Bye, everyone. Take care.
Thanks, Ryan.
Yep.
Bye, guys.